Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to the 8th and the final episode of RippleMakers. It's been an incredible journey bringing together transformation leaders who are shaping the future of business. And I'm delighted to close this podcast series with someone who has spent over 3 decades helping organizations navigate transformations at scale. Today, I'm joined by Sandeep Kumar, a seasoned transformation leader who has worked across consulting, manufacturing, supply chain, analytics, intelligent automation, you name anything. He has partnered with organizations across the globe, and Sandeep has been at the forefront of leading technology-led business transformations, scaling consulting businesses, and that makes him the perfect guest to help us decode what transformation looks like in the age of AI. So Sandeep, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Ranan. Pleasure to be on the podcast with you.
And I'm seriously excited to spend the next 15 minutes with you, and I'm sure that your insights will be invaluable for the audiences. To start with, we usually are focusing on the need of the human side of the transformation, because the industry report says that 70% of the transformation programs still struggling to yield the desired value. And when we look back, we saw that the industry analysis shows that it's not only the technology, it's not only the business problem, but it's the adoption and how people navigate through the change contributes towards the overall success. And I'm sure you have seen this more than most of us in the industry. So to start with, I think organizations are increasingly relying on AI these days to make recommendation, even to decide on the decisions it wants to make. But how do you build trust in the AI outputs with a workforce that has never had to trust on a machine? So it was always like human, the managers, the leaders who used to be in the forefront of the decision making. So how do you build the trust in this era?
I think that's an excellent question, Ranan, and I think it's a question that probably has a very evolving answer as we speak. So I've basically, witnessed this from close quarters with many customers and customer organizations as they've tried to thread in intelligent automation, AI, and so on and so forth into their organizations. What I typically find is that there are 3 elements that are very, very important, right? In terms of, getting the workforce to start trusting in the output of AI and, making it work for them. So first and foremost, I think, AI, and I'll basically call out AI as an extension of intelligent process automation, right? So it's really, about taking, what we used to call as RPA to intelligent automation, from there to machine learning, from there to generative AI, and now agentic AI. So when you look at that entire continuum, right, one thing which obviously has always been at the very, very heart of any of these transformations is the ability to make the people who are going to be using this part of the process at the very inception. So I think co-creation, right, on how do you basically bring in AI into whatever change that you're planning to do, whether it's a business process change, a reimagined process, whatever the case may be. I think it is very important to get them into the mix as early as possible, right? This is not an area where you can throw a requirement spec across and then say that, hey, look, this is the output I've got, and go and use it, right? You have to basically work on the learning loop. You have to work on training the models, right? And hence it is very important that the folks who basically are going to be using this are the folks who also were instrumental in building it, right? So that's probably point number 1. Point number 2 is that, AI by definition is probabilistic, right? And if it is probabilistic, then it is very important that you actually set the right kind of acceptance criteria, if you may, in terms of what is your acceptance criteria for going ahead and saying that this AI is working for me. For example, I can build a price prediction model for agri-commodity sourcing, right? And it can be as complicated as it can get, right? Who will use this? It will be used by a set of commodity buyers, right? Who basically are very, very good in terms of making decisions based on their knowledge, right? Now, unless
Correct.
until you get them a product that gives them a certain accuracy, let's say 98%, let's say 99%, right? People are not going to switch, right? People are going to say that, look, this tool cannot give me a recommendation which is better than what I can do as a human being, or can even come near to supporting my kind of decisions. So it becomes very important that you actually set the exit criteria for AI with the business sponsors of a AI program upfront,
Mhm.
so that we are all very clear that if I get to this particular target level, 98%, right? Let's say we have basically got to a place
Mhm.
which is good for the users, and where the users say that, hey, look, I don't have an issue in terms of the trust factor that I have in the recommendations, and hence I actually start using it as a decision support tool in a fairly standard and then of course expanded way across my entire buyer base or across my entire user base. I think the third factor which becomes very important is this factor around setting the expectations upfront that AI is not meant to be a replacement tool. AI is meant to be an augmentation or assisted tool, right? At the end of the day,
Excellent.
it's about getting the organization to move to a higher baseline of performance. And to get to a higher baseline of performance, there are two things that you really need to worry about. One, eliminate as much of variation as possible across the user base. And that is what AI does beautifully, right? It basically elevates and gives you a standard level of, performance baseline that otherwise users, cannot really match, right? So you take a sample set of users, 30 users, there will be guys who do far better, there will be guys who do, far lower. So it's very, you know, extremely variable, right? In the way, users actually adopt to AI, or rather users actually, basically run their processes on their own. So
Right.
once AI comes in, right, AI actually helps them elevate the performance. And for a guy who's, basically a very smart user, his baseline, his or her baseline just changes dramatically, right? So it becomes very important that, people who understand that AI is here to really help me and make better, smarter, more intelligent decisions.
So then let's move to the next part is like, yes, the first part is to bring in the trust, what we discussed already. And the next part is like, how do we measure the success of transformation overall? Yes, obviously in today's world, everything is linked to AI. So AI is coming to the forefront. But if we had to advise a CXO, which one or two metrics should every leader consistently track to truly understand the health of a transformation?
Yeah. So again, Ranan, I think, and I will try and focus more on AI-led transformations for this particular conversation. So I think the first metric that I think is very, very important in an AI-led transformation of today is really about measuring, what is a user adoption scores. Now, this can be measured either through, basically, NPS or advocacy scores, or it could also be measured in terms of, how many people have actually started using a particular capability, right? Very important because this requires change, right? Any of these AI-led transformations requires a certain critical mass to first be established and then to basically expand, right? So, what I've seen in most of these AI programs is that, you'll always find that there are a few early adopters. These early
Correct.
adopters are basically then able to drive a certain level of output that the rest can't. And then there's, this very nice, catch-up process that starts happening. And once you get to a certain critical mass of users who say that, hey, look, now I'm using this, I think it becomes a standard way of working, right? Then everybody kind of, gets on board, right? And this is true, I think, for any kind of, let's say, business transformation in general, but more true for AI-led transformations, largely because now you're actually talking about, a lot of stuff that humans used to do, right? Being replaced by agents, being replaced by algorithms. And as these tasks basically go through this entire process of automation, the ability is to say, yeah, I mean, the output that I'm getting for this particular task or set of tasks, is it good enough? Is it better than what I used to do before? I think that's really the barrier, right? That one and one has to kind of break through.
Correct.
I think that's one very important thing. The other thing which becomes very important, I guess, is in the context of most programs, AI programs, it is always rooted in a particular use case or a process scenario, right?
Mhm.
And if you have got your design of your AI program right, then your expectations in terms of business value outcomes need to be very clear. Now, this metric of business value outcomes is, of course, very use case specific, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, if I'm really looking at AI to basically drive, let's say, faster, accelerated product innovation, then my metric there is really in terms of my ability to crash the cycle time of a new product launch from, let's say, X to, let's say, 0.5X, right? Or to basically get to a hit ratio on new products which is far superior than what was there before. So I
Right.
think the other element of how do you really measure and track is really rooted in the concept of what is it that AI is meant to do for you, what is the business value outcome that it is trying to get you towards, right, or drive towards. And the articulation of that, the target setting for that, right, is really your North Star, right? So you really need to basically figure out, how you're measuring on that particular road that you have taken, on that particular journey that you have taken. Last but not the least, I think, most AI programs also sometimes, have a challenge, right, in terms of creating a measurement model itself,
Yeah.
right? Now, this
Mhm.
measurement model, I think most people tend to associate measurement of AI programs with efficiency gains or cost cutting.
So true.
I think important, but is that the real, or is it the biggest value unlock, right? For larger business transformations, what at least I have seen is that efficiency is only one lever, and that is probably the more quick win kind of lever, right, in terms of what it gets you. But
Yeah.
what it actually drives towards for an organization is the ability to drive what I call as better effectiveness of processes. What I mean by better effectiveness, right, beyond efficiency, is really in terms of improving your process outcomes significantly. So again, in the product innovation example, my earlier baseline was X, now it is 0.6X, right? So my
Right.
0.6X is my new performance baseline to which I am driving towards. And it obviously translates into a competitiveness for the company. It translates into a business value which can be financially quantified as well, right, and so on. So the effectiveness parameter is probably the most dominant parameter. And beyond all this, there's a third parameter that becomes important as well, which is the experience parameter. So for the users who basically are really the beneficiaries of these kind of programs, has it simplified the lives of the users? Has it made it easier for them to interact with the systems and the processes? Has it basically made it more consumer grade? Enterprise systems are not built in the same way as consumer systems are, right? So consumer systems basically give you a very different user experience. And one of the challenges that I always see is that users come back and say that, hey, look, when I work with my ordering app, there's a certain experience that I get. Why can't I get the same experience with my enterprise apps, right? And so on and so forth. So I think the expectation also has kind of converged to a point where every user today actually has a very clear baseline in mind in terms of what is the quality of experience that he or she desires, having been exposed to all these consumer apps that have been built over the last 10-15 years.
True.
Versus what do I really want to experience with my enterprise apps as well, right? So I think that is basically a very steep jump, right, that is happening today in terms of how do you basically elevate the experience that users have working with their corporate and enterprise applications. So I guess these are the three, Ranan, that I think would be probably very clear metrics, right, that one should be measuring. The last one, I mean, I call it as E cubed: efficiency,
Yeah.
effectiveness, and experience, right?
Nice.
So if you can actually build a model to measure your process outcomes, AI-led process outcomes on those, then I think it's a very nice way of articulating what is the value that you've got.
Now it's more an advisory question from you. Is like, if we revisit and if we meet once again after 5 years, we are sitting in say like July 2030, and if we look back, and we'll definitely see that there are few organizations which will be more successful in the AI transformation side compared to the others. So what, as per you, will be the biggest differentiator between the organizations that are pulled ahead compared to the others?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of crystal ball gazing, but having said that, I think we know where AI is going, and very clearly, I think the first attribute that I would actually want to look at, right, which will define the picture of success, 5 years from now, is really the attribute around reimagination. Now, what I mean by that is that what AI is doing today is fundamentally it is allowing companies to move away from very traditional legacy models of process and system design to models which are really AI-driven process and systems design, right? Now, that fundamentally means that many of the things that could be done earlier, which had certain constraints, are now getting unconstrained because of AI. A classical example, I'll give you a classical example here, is in terms of how people are working with AI to really predict what are the kind of risk events that are happening on a day-to-day basis in the supply chains that they run, and be able to respond to that, right, very quickly.
Correct.
So,
yes.
So what AI is allowing you to do is to actually look at data, right? Data coming from your enterprise systems and data which is lying outside your enterprise in the form of, maybe unstructured data, in the form of weather data, in the form of location data, right? You name it, right? And it is basically giving you the ability to go ahead and say that, hey, look, I know that I will actually have a out of stock event in my supply chain tomorrow at around 10 a.m. right? Now, if my AI can help me predict this, right, and predict this well, and this is what we are doing today, right? I should also be able to preempt that particular event. Any out of stock event would basically be leading to lost sales, right? So it's a revenue loss.
Yeah.
So can I actually put in place all the alternative strategies that I have to basically mitigate or take away the risk of out of stock events to happen proactively, right? So prediction and preemption, I think these are the two things that kind of go hand in hand as you start weaving in AI into the way you manage your supply chain. So I took a supply chain example, but again, bringing back the context of reimagination, right? So today, supply chain professionals are reimagining their processes where they're looking at the possibilities that AI is bringing in, which did not exist, let's say, 3 years back. And because of that, they can now say, okay, I can manage my out of stock and disruptions in my supply chain in a very different way. And that is a reimagination part of it, right? Which basically gives you a far better supply chain performance, whether it's in terms of service fulfillment or fill rates or what have you, right? And that is where it becomes very important that companies which basically are taking that jump forward, right, are actually using AI not as a way of just looking at some small POC, small use case somewhere, right, but they're looking at end-to-end processes and reimagining it. So very clearly the winners of the next 5 years, right, are the guys who basically let this reimagination happen, commit to that reimagination, and then are able to basically deliver a far superior supply chain performance than what could have been possible today, right, with today's process and system capabilities. I also, typically use this analogy, right? See, what AI is typically doing is it is allowing companies to work at a different clock speed. What I mean by that is that, earlier, you used to work, let's say, with maybe a 2-day horizon or maybe with a 5-day horizon, right? What AI is doing is it's just making things faster, right? And it is reducing the clock speed. Now, what that is interestingly doing is it is basically making organizations, more agile, more adaptive. And I think the one very interesting question that comes up in my mind is, there was this paradigm, right? Efficiency and agility, they go contra.
Yeah.
And hence, what was good for a certain system design was really efficiency led, or it was agility led, right? That is the way you did it. But tomorrow, I think you're going to basically have to merge these two, right? It has
Absolutely.
got to be both efficiency and agility, which is kind of built together. So the convergence of agility and responsiveness with efficiency, right, is what is going to be another defining parameter for organizations of tomorrow, right, who are successful. Last but not the least, I think, one of the other things that I would actually be looking for is, how people have actually ingrained or embraced AI, right, at two levels.
Yeah.
One is as a user, and two, in terms of basically helping me run my processes better, right? For both of these, obviously, people keep talking about AI skilling programs and so on and so forth. Important, but not sufficient, right? I think unless until you actually experience AI and become a user of AI, it becomes very difficult for you to really, take that big jump, right? So how have companies actually embraced AI and brought it into their workforce concept? How has that fundamentally changed the concept of an organization structure, the roles within, the way of working? I think those are the other things to look at. So I think the third thing which would be very important to look at is, what would my AI workforce of 5 years later look like versus where it is today, right?
Absolutely.
And my feeling is that it will be very different from what we have today. So today, if we have, somebody who's basically like a factory manager, tomorrow you'll basically have, somebody who's a factory manager, yes, but you'll also have, somebody who's like a IT, OT or Industry 4.0 AI specialist, right? Sitting next to the guy, right? So there'll be new roles that will start coming up. So I believe that, that is something that, one would also be looking for. And I've seen this, start to come up in a few of the organizations which are higher up on the AI curve. So there are certain companies, especially manufacturing as a sector, you'd perhaps agree with me, is a sector that actually has adopted to AI far better, far faster.
Absolutely.
And the value unlocks has been very, very high. So
Very
that
high,
is where,
yes.
Where there's a lot of data within the system, within the enterprise, and, these new roles have started springing up, right? And so on. So the org design of the future will actually have a very different set of roles, organization structure, ways of working, right? So that would probably be the third characteristic that I would really be looking for.
It's a time for having a little bit of fun. So this time I'm going to put you in a rapid fire, and I'll not let you think much about these questions. So whatever comes to your mind first, I want to hear that. Okay? Right. So the first one on your way. One must-have skills for leaders today.
The ability to separate the noise from the signal.
Awesome. One skill you are betting on for your organization.
Problem solving.
Yes, can't agree more. What's the toughest belief the leaders need to unlearn?
Experience is not a good predictor of the future. So what worked for us in the past, right, is no longer a good, let's say, predictor of what the future will hold. So I think a lot of unlearning, relearning, right, and the pace at which you do it.
Absolutely. One best practice you believe will soon become obsolete?
I come from the consulting world. Consulting used to work on the concept of knowledge arbitrage. So knowledge arbitrage, I think, is gone. AI has taken knowledge arbitrage out of the equation to a very great degree. So I think knowledge arbitrage.
So let's end with a little controversial question. One overrated trend everyone talks about today.
I think it's the investment in AI skilling. I think everybody talks about, basically doing mass AI skilling programs,
Yeah.
getting people, to understand the basics. Um, I think, one has to really pivot very quickly into the practitioner world.
Yeah.
For AI to work, you really need to basically have a very profound knowledge of machine learning, data science, AI, and the ability to put it into practice. So I think while skilling is obviously important, I will not say that it is not, but I think it has been oversold and overemphasized in most organizations today.
So, Sandeep, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and practical insights. I enjoyed so much hearing from you, and I particularly appreciate how you connected the technology with the human side of the transformations, how it's becoming more and more important for people to have a play, how much learnability of the people is going to make a difference. And that's a reminder that sustainable change is as much about trust and leadership as it is about the innovation. So thanks once again for your time, for your presence, and for everyone who has joined us through this season of RippleMakers. Yes, officially we are ending this series for the time being, and we hope the ideas shared by our guests continue to inspire you to create ripples of meaningful change within your organization. And what a great finale with Sandeep to kind of close this series with excellent insights. So until next time, keep learning, keep leading the transformation, and keep making ripples. And one exciting news to share with all of you is that, especially for those who are in Bangalore, on 4th August, we are going to host our annual flagship event, Synapse 2026. So more leaders and the more transformation experts will be there during the entire day, discussing about the nuances of transformations and how things can be done better and what are the trends we are witnessing. So see you everyone, and thanks for watching this series, and we'll soon be back with the second season of RippleMakers. So thank you everyone, and once again thank you so much, Sandeep. It was so lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much, Siddhant. Pleasure being there on your podcast, and very, very intriguing in the way you constructed it as well. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of this.
Absolutely my pleasure, Sandeep. Thank you.